Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another book review from the Series 2000 book series. And it's book number 18, Horrors of the Black Ring. I'm not gonna lie, y'all, I was really disappointed with this book, and it's unfortunate because this was probably a childhood favorite of mine. I had a lot of fond memories whenever I thought back on this book, and I've told many people that, when I probably reread it, I probably would like it. And I know there's a good amount of people out there who really enjoy this book. But sometimes my childhood memory and my childhood nostalgia betrays me, like the case of Werewolf in the Living Room. And you might remember that review a while back, where that was one of my childhood favorite books, and coming into it as an adult, it does not hold up. The same thing could be applied here. And it's really unfortunate, kind of like Werewolf in the Living Room. This story on paper, I normally like the slow burn whodunit stories. I normally like the haunted mask trope stories where people put on masks and they, it takes them to a place where they become something that they're not, or the people around them become something that they're not. So like the Haunted Mask books, Werewolf Skin, even to an extent Five Masks of Dr. Scream. There's even some elements there in Trick or Trap. You might remember that short story if you've read it, Monster on the Ice from Tales Book 6, has this, formula. Even though it's terrible, the Haunted Mask formula normally works. And this is like I said, mainly borrowing from Haunted Mask and, those whodunit stories like Phantom of the Auditorium and The Werewolf of Fever Swamp. And it just, I don't know, it feels like this book is, if I had one adjective for it, it's just sloppy. And I'll get into the reasons why I think that near the end of the video. And it sucks because, like I said, I love whodunits. I love the Haunted Mask formula. If we're talking about Werewolf in the Living Room, I love werewolves. That's one of my favorite, subgenre to read too. And when you get a disappointing one, it's always, kind of depressing, especially when it's in your favorite trope. So, yeah, this one, it's not all that great, but I would recommend it if you haven't read it before. You might get something out of it. So yeah, let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. So off the bat, this book does not shy away from letting the reader know, at least Stein, I think, is letting the reader know that, he's taking from a popular book here. So the character's first name is Beth, right? So this girl is named Beth, and she has a little sister named Amanda. And Beth and Amanda are kind of estranged with each other. Amanda's constantly bothering Beth, calling her names, calling her goody-goody, saying that she doesn't have a spine, she's too good for her own good, right? And Amanda just wants to spend time with Beth, but Beth's been kind of preoccupied recently. She wants to help out with the school carnival, and this crush that she likes is going to be there, and her sister gives her some, crap about that. And, Beth's kind of embarrassed. And also, Beth's mom, is by herself watching the kids throughout the story because the dad's away on a business trip, like another story here. And, Beth's not having the greatest time, right? It's around the springtime, so you get that springtime setting, and there's a carnival, and she's, getting to be around her crush, but her sister's annoying her, and you kind of get this relationship when she interacts with this guy named Anthony while walking to school one day. And when she's walking, her and her sister, she has to walk her sister to school, then go to her own school, because her sister's younger and go to elementary school, and she goes to middle school. So she gets cut off by Anthony. He's like tormenting her, calling her names, and her little sister's joining in, making fun of her. And Anthony almost runs into this bird that's hurt, has a broken wing. And, Beth really lets her personality come out in this opening. She has a really cool monologue. She's really honest about herself. She has, insecurities. She has fears. But she's more honest about, she wants to be a socialite and help out with her community, with her school and stuff. So that's really cool. And when you see her want to rescue this bird, it shows that she has a lot of humanity in her, and she cares for the weak, and she wants to do good. So you really get the impression that she's a good person. Anthony, you know, he just doesn't care. He just finds the bird to be weak and wants to kill it. And even Amanda's like, yeah, why don't you just let the bird die? And she's like, no, I'm going to be late to school. You go off to school. Anthony, I'll smell you later. I'm going to go take the bird home, so it's okay. She takes the bird home with her, and then she arrives at school late. And when she gets there, her teacher named Miss Gold was told by Anthony that she would be late because she saved a bird. And Miss Gold has a really good relationship with her and tells her, hey, that some things are good reasons why you're late to school. So don't worry about it. And Beth gets into, in her monologue, about how she thinks Miss Gold's really pretty and how she's really nice and how she would pretty much do anything she asks because she's a great teacher. And she notices this ring on Miss Gold's finger, and it's this really ornate ring with a giant black diamond, kind of like how you see on the cover here. And it kind of has a smudge in it. And Beth makes note of it, and in the proper lighting, it kind of looks like a face inside of the ring. And it looks odd, and Miss Gold kind of, you know, acknowledges that there's something wrong with the ring, like there's a smudge in it. But Beth pays no attention to it, and, you know, goes and sits down at her desk. And class goes by. Later on that day, she has to stay after school so she can help, you know, with some art for the art sale at the carnival. So she's in there with her crush. I forget his name. I want to say his name is Peter, but I don't think that's his name. It could be something like that. But I'm just going to call him Crush Guy. She's in there with Crush Guy, and they're working on, you know, paintings. And there's also another nod here to another book, where in her painting, she's painting a sandwich with worms for fingers, and the worms are crawling on the sandwich. Why a sandwich, right? It's because all these things in the first few chapters are pretty much giving a meta nod to that this character, and everything in this first few chapters is supposed to be hinting at the haunted mask, right? So I thought that was kind of fun. Well, the bully guy, Anthony, he's just a big old jerk, and in his painting is a really ugly girl, and he tells everybody that it's supposed to be Beth. And this upsets Beth, and she gets like visibly upset with the comments that he made. And her crush, you know, tries to stick up for her and pretty much tries to instigate a fight with Anthony. And then the fight gets broken up in the art room. And after the fight gets broken up, they hear a commotion off in Miss Gold's room. And when they go there, there's chalk writing all over the chalkboard. You know, this is the 90s, right? Or I guess late 90s. There's still chalkboards, not dry erase boards. So they go in there and they see writing, and it says, "The carnival is doomed," and it's written multiple times. And Miss Gold is like, who would write this? And the kids are like, somebody's trying to sabotage the carnival. This can't be right. We got to find out who's doing this. Well, Anthony shows up to the room, and Anthony has chalk dust all over his hands. And Miss Gold's sitting there cupping her hand with her ring, and she looks kind of sad and depressed. And the other two kids are like, it must be you. You must have did it. And Anthony's like, I didn't do it. And he scurries off before they can really hold him down and like interrogate him. And Miss Gold's like, well, I don't think that's out of character for Anthony to do. And essentially the kids were like, no, it's not. We think it's Anthony. So they couldn't do anything to stop the writing, but that thought kind of lingers in the back of Beth's mind, right? So, you know, this story kind of jumps around, right? So the next day, right, or maybe a few days later, I forget. They come back. I think it's a Saturday. She has to come in on a Saturday to work on the painting, to get the paintings caught up in time for the carnival. And her little sister is pestering her about like playing with her Barbies and stuff, you know, typical little sister stuff, giving her a hard time. And she receives a phone call saying that, you know, you need to stay away. You need to not go to the carnival, right? And, or go to school that day. You need to stay away from the school. And she thinks that it's her sister calling. So she's like, you're trying to sabotage me going to school today. I'm not buying your crap. I'm going to help. So when she gets there, she's early. Not a lot of people are there. And she goes to the art room, and all the art is destroyed. All of it's destroyed, minus one. And it's the painting of her by Anthony. So when all the kids start pouring in, they're all distraught. The art teacher comes in, he's distraught. Anthony comes in and he's like, I didn't do this. And Beth's like, what do you mean? Your painting's the only one left. You have to be it. And all the kids are pointing the finger at Anthony. Anthony even looks nervous, like, who would do such a thing, right? And the art teacher's like, I might have to get the police involved. So their art's now destroyed, and now they have to redo all this art, and this upsets the kids. Well, later on, there's another skip where Beth is heading to the home ec room to help this other girl named Tina, I think that's her name, to bake some cookies or some brownies for the bake sale portion of the carnival. And she thinks she sees a woman, like, in the shadow of her eye with blonde hair go by, but she doesn't really think about it, which is a nod that maybe this could be Miss Gold walking by or something. And they go in the home ec room, and Anthony's there too, apparently trying to help. He's like, I helped clean up the art room. And Beth's like, yeah, right, you helped clean up the art room. He's like, no, I really did. And while he's in there, the ovens catch on fire. And the whole home ec room catches ablaze, and they have to evacuate the room. And pretty much all the food they were trying to make was destroyed. And she keeps, in her internal monologue, she's like, well, all these things keep happening, and Anthony's always associated with it. It has to be Anthony. And now she keeps saying that she wants to get payback on Anthony. She's been saying this since the beginning of the book. But she really wants to get Anthony back. She thinks it's him. Right? So after that, Miss Gold goes to the office with Beth because I forget what exactly happened. There's something that happens, right? I don't want to spoil what happens now that I remember. They go to the principal's office, and she's holding a ring. She looks really sad, and she doesn't really look like herself. And Beth keeps thinking that ring, ever since the ring's been around, all this weird stuff has been happening. But she doesn't really think it could ever be Miss Gold because Miss Gold is just a nice person. But she seems like she's not being herself. And she makes mental note of that. So when the story jumps to finally the carnival, it's the day of the carnival, and she doesn't really feel like it's safe for her to go because they keep getting, you know, they had all this weird stuff happen. They've gotten threats about the carnival. Beth doesn't think that it's good for Amanda to go, but Amanda would be really upset if she didn't get to go to the carnival. So Beth takes her, and they head there. They bring some money. They buy some brownies, and like Haunted Mask, when Carly Beth bites into a sandwich, it gets a worm. Beth bites into a brownie and gets maggots. Gets maggots in her mouth. And I might have skipped over another thing. They're testing a dunk tank. Well, her crush guy was testing the dunk tank, and Anthony was pressing it, and he got into some boiling water, and that's what put them into the principal's office. But, you know, this kind of bleeds in later on, right? So thinking about stuff like that, she's thinking about, like, well, this, you know, we got maggots and brownies, you know, somebody's sabotaging this, because she thinks back onto the dunk tank, she thinks back onto the home ec room fire and all the other stuff that's been going on. And she's like, I can't focus on that right now. I have to deal with it later. So she's supposed to help out with duties at the carnival. She's supposed to take tickets inside the gym portion of it. So she goes inside the gym, and she takes over the ticket booth for the other kid so he can go off and have fun with the carnival, and she's going to sit there with her sister. But the moment she sits down, this cloaked figure comes into the gym and starts tearing up the gym. All these things, like there's a basketball rim explodes, the bake sale table catches on fire, the ticket booth is like spinning around pretty much infinitely. Everybody's in a disarray and in panic, and throughout all the commotion, she gets separated from Amanda, and Amanda's laying on the ground, and the hooded figure picks her up and tries to take her away. So Beth instinctively tries to help. There's police there because all this vandalism has been happening, and the principal was given an option to either cancel the carnival or, you know, keep it going, and she decides to keep it going for some reason. So there's police there, and after a few struggles, Beth manages to save Amanda, and they handcuff the person on the cloak. And shocker plot twist, they pull up the cloak, and it's Miss Gold. Miss Gold is like, it's not me. Trust me, it's not me. But she looks really sickly, and something seems to be off about her. And as the police are taking her away, Beth wants to know why she did this, why she was sabotaging the carnival. And before she can say anything, the cop car rides away and takes her off. But on the ground is this black ring. And she picks it up and she looks into it, and without any real hesitation, she just puts it on because she feels like she's, impulsively told to put the ring on. So when she puts it on, it starts to like suck to her skin, and it makes her feel a bit different. And this is where the black ring portion, like the mystery part of the story, ends, and the black ring haunted mask reskin kind of begins. So she gets home, and she realizes that this ring has this, she has this instinct now to want to do bad things, right? And there's a couple things that happen that she does, right? So one of the first things she comes across is like Anthony's bike. I think she slices something on his bike. I think his bike chain, rips it off, and doesn't realize her own strength. She's like, well, I didn't know I was this strong. She destroyed the bike chain on his bike so he can't use it anymore, and she felt good about it. So then she went home, and her sister's Barbies are on the bed, and she's like, oh, I'll help organize the Barbies, and she takes the Barbie dolls and just rips them to shreds, and she feels good by doing this stuff. Later on at school, she's kind of questioning, like, why she's doing this, like, why does she feel evil, and she pushed a kid into a locker that she didn't even know, and, like, she felt immediately bad about it, and after that, she's like, look, something's wrong with me. I don't really feel like myself. Maybe I need to go ask Miss Gold about this. So once, she tells her mom that she's having, like, bad dreams. There's a dream, right? There's a dream that she has that is so graphic where it basically involves chickens, feathers, and blood, right? So she's having these dreams where she destroys a room, has feathers everywhere. She's destroying her sister's dolls. She broke Anthony's bike chain. She shoved a kid into a locker. She feels like she has to go talk to Miss Gold. So she goes and talks to Miss Gold at the hospital. There's a whole thing where she has to, sneak in there and do this whole thing with this nurse. But when she sees Miss Gold, she looks like she's dying almost. And she's happy to see her because, she's basically the only kid that has come and given her a get well card and has thought about her. And she asks her, is like, why did you do this? And she goes, you have to understand, it wasn't me. And she's asking about the ring, and she shows her the ring, and she's like, you shouldn't have put that on. That was a big mistake. And she's like, well, you have to help me. And the teacher can't really do anything to help her. So Beth realizes that there's something wrong, and she's going to have to try to fight the ring, or just, hope that Miss Gold will reveal more information to her. But right before any of that, she gets visited by her crush, who reminds her that, hey, you promised me early on, because something happened early on where she kind of promised him that she would help him go to this bike race and help, raise money for charity. And that seems to be really important to him, and she wants to impress him. So she wanted to help, but now that she has this ring issue, she's afraid that she's going to mess up the charity event, and said, hey, look, I don't want to go. And Peter kind of questions her morals, and then she's like, you know what, I'll go. Why not? So she takes her bike and she heads down. She gets changed and goes with her crush to the bike race. And, her crush kind of dared Anthony that he would never race him, because Anthony's just the kind of kid, he's just a all talk, no bite. But Anthony decides to show up with his brand new bike. He got a new one. And she couldn't help herself again and cuts his brakes. It's like, hey, now he has no brakes when this race starts. And after she does that, she starts hearing voices. It's kind of hinted that she starts hearing voices out of this ring. And the voices are now in her head saying, yeah, keep doing these bad things. And she comes to a realization. She goes, I'm not evil. I'm not what this ring is. And this ring is tainting me. I need to go home now and get this ring off. So she leaves the bike race, heads straight home, and she heads right to the workshop. All of her family's gone, because it's a weekend day. And she she goes into her dad's workshop, and she's trying to poke tools at the ring, and then something happens with the ring. The ring may or may not have this new ability that was not present in the story before, and this raises the stakes a little bit, and there's even some notions that she might have to cut her finger off, right? And then there's a bombshell that she learns when she goes into the workshop about this bird that she rescued earlier. This bird, had a broken wing, and throughout the story she kind of checks on it, and it looks weaker as the story goes along. But she discovers something tragic has happened to this bird, and when she discovers what this ring is doing now, she thinks she has an opportunity that may or may not save her from the ring, and may or may not involve the bird. And then something happens, and the situation seemingly may or may not be resolved. And then the twist comes in when her family comes back home, and somebody may have something that's not good. And that's essentially Horrors of the Black Rain. I kind of told some story bits out of order, only because, there are some significant time jumps throughout the story, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly where each are, because this book really does skip around a lot. But that's essentially the story in a nutshell, right? So let's start off with the positives. I think Beth is easily the best part about this book. Her monologue was great. She was very honest with the reader. She's very vulnerable. She has that Carly Bethian, way of carrying herself. And I really appreciated that. I like that she has that good soul where she wants to save the bird. And there's some payoff with that in the story. She struggles with that good going bad. Now that I think about it, as I've read a lot of, older and newer Goosebumps books, if you like Son of Slappy, if you like the original Haunted Mask, there's a lot of stuff in this book that's in those books as well. Like Son of Slappy, I think took a lot from this in some ways, with the good going bad, the fall from grace. It feels a lot like that in some areas. And Beth is just a really enjoyable character, and I like where the story takes her, right? And I also like the meta nods to Carly Beth from the Haunted Mask with her character in the first few chapters. The meta-ness didn't last too long in the story, but the whole worm sandwich stuff, her name being Beth, yeah, it's very... I think Stein was doing that to be meta for the fans of the Haunted Mask, and I can kind of appreciate it. I really wish the meta-ness continued throughout the whole book, because I think that would have been a fun way to do like a rehash or a reskin book. But yeah, it was fun while it lasted. Another positive I have are some of the scenes in this book are truly terrifying, right? There's a dream sequence, like I said, with chickens, feathers, and blood. That was great stuff. Some of the scenes dealing with the hooded figure at the carnival, that was genuinely tense and really great. Yeah, those scenes were really excellent. Right? And this kind of stems down to the ending as well. While the stuff with the ring really wasn't propped up that well throughout the story, it kind of comes out of nowhere. That stuff with the ring at the end was chilling. It was very scary, and it got to me. So yeah, this book did a great job at delivering scary moments, right? And I kind of like the attempt of putting a whodunit into the Haunted Mask formula, kind of smushing them together. I think on paper I like the idea more than what we got here, but I appreciated that mystery aspect to lead into her getting the ring. It did feel kind of long, and it did kind of drag, and it really wasn't a mystery, and I'll get into that in just a minute in the negatives. But I like that Phantom of the Auditorium flair in the beginning, in some ways. I do like that, all this stuff keeps happening, and they're trying to point the finger on who it is, right? But that also bleeds into my negatives, right? Now, the mystery aspect, they have suspects in this story, but throughout, pretty much from the get-go, right when you see the chalkboard with the carnival is doomed, and Miss Gold is holding her ring, there's numerous touchbacks to her looking guilty or sad by looking at her ring when all this stuff is happening, that it's not really a whodunit mystery. It's framed like one, but it's more like you already know that it has to be Miss Gold. It's so predictable in this whodunit part that you already know it's going to be her, and you're just waiting for that moment for when that's revealed. And it does take like 70 pages. This is only 108 pages, mind you. This is one of the shortest Goosebumps books ever that's not in the Horrorland series. And you know that it's going to be her, and it takes like 70 pages just to get her revealed, and around the same amount of pages for this ring to get in Beth's possession. It just kind of, the mystery aspect, it was just trying to hammer in things to kind of fluff the book. It was all fluff. And if it wasn't so obvious, I mean, I probably wouldn't even mention it, but it's blatantly obvious. It's very anticlimactic when that reveal with her character comes in at the carnival, because you know it's going to happen. It's one of the most predictable things in Goosebumps history. Yeah, that's a big negative. The second negative I have is the pacing to this book. It's really rushed, man. This book just barrels through story. And when I mean barrel, you'll be in mid-paragraph, and you'll be wrapping up a conversation, and then boom, later that day, or 2 days later, or the following weekend. Why jump like that? It does that in numerous chapters, and it's such a short book, and it feels like it's just trying to barrel through the story without telling the story or letting it breathe, right? You just have a bunch of fast forwarding to events, and I feel like I just like my brain was just kind of tired from the pace. I feel like the pacing in this book is very reminiscent to something like Egg Monsters from Mars or Deep Trouble 2 I read recently. It feels like this too. Just really bad pacing. I was not a fan of the pacing. And kind of bleeding into one of the more detrimental and disappointing things is the concept with the ring itself, right? Not only do you have the predictability with Miss Gold, right? You have this issue with the ring, right? The ring, throughout the story, once you realize near the end that the ring was behind all this stuff and the mystery beforehand, you're like, okay, the ring's able to like pretty much inflict evil and just cause mischief and mayhem. And when the ring starts talking to Beth, you're like, okay, well, apparently it's like a demonic presence. It's encouraging her to do evil. This is very much like the Haunted Mask. It works until near the very end, when, you know, arguably the best part about the ring, one of the scariest parts about it, is the worst parts about it. There's something that happens with the ring where you don't see it coming, and when it happens, you're like, wait. How's this going on? Because how it's able to do what it does is because it says that it's collected enough evil, and now it's able to do what it's trying to do. And it just comes out of nowhere. It feels like, where did this stuff come from? If this was the case, wasn't the carnival enough evil? Why do you need Beth to do all this extra stuff? It just feels like it's tacked on there. It doesn't really feel earned, right? You don't really feel like we understood the ring up until that point for that moment to be earned. As you know, it just comes out of nowhere, and it kind of feels lacking in logic compared to the rest of the story. It feels off. And also mentioning the ring too, another negative I have with it is that there's no origin behind it. You know, Miss Gold, she randomly comes to school with a ring, and the ring has a smudge. There's no backstory of how she got the ring, what's the importance of the ring, why we as readers should care about this ring. The only way Stein tries to convey that we should care about it is because he says that Beth, every time she looks at it, she gets an uneasy feeling about it. But there's no explanation behind this thing. You know, when Miss Gold gets, arrested, she finds the ring, and then you kind of get the impression that, okay, the ring is obviously doing something to Beth, so the ring must have been doing something to Miss Gold. But we never figure out why the case is for that, where this ring came from. And even by the twist, when you read, the twist is fine, by the way, the ending twist. But when you read that and you hear the explanation about what happens at the end with, you know, maybe Amanda and her mom, you know, Beth's little sister. It's like, okay, well, they got it from this place, obviously, but what is this place? It feels like a bunch of unknowns. It feels like there's some unresolved things, some things that I really wanted to know that the book just didn't make any effort to answer, and that's frustrating, right? And my last negative I do have a lot of negatives with this book, but they're, you know, they kind of add up here, but Amanda and Anthony, you know, the little sister and the bully, they were really annoying. They were kind of obnoxiously annoying throughout the book. And that's to be expected in a story like this where, you know, you have a good protagonist. Everybody else around them is supposed to be crap. But they were just extra crappy, and I think they were written kind of lousy. I mean, I don't think they had much personality to them other than just to be annoying. And they weren't fun to read at all. But I did like, this I guess is another positive, they do get punished. They do get some stuff coming to them. Amanda's maybe gets erased or defaulted by the twist ending, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But seeing them get payback was awesome. You know, that was worth it, because they suck. But from a 0 to 5 star basis, y'all, I'm going to be honest, I was really disappointed with this book. I think this book is just too sloppy. I think it's a mixture of that pace and that forcedness with that, you know, kind of lackluster mystery aspect with that haunted mask reskin just sandwiched together. If in the, you know, accompanied with the pace, it just feels sloppy, jumping all over the place, not really touching on things it should touch on, or focus on the areas of like the ring and maybe its origins or its motivations, or trying to make that finale, the climax with the ring, feel earned. None of that makes any sense because of the pace. The pace is just jumping around to events in the story, trying to make it more action-y and I guess less substancy. And that's pretty much how I feel about it. I was really disappointed with this one. I was leaning to maybe giving this a D, like lower than a 3.5, and I really wanted to, but I decided to bump it up to a C, between a 3.5 and a 3.9, only because I wanted to give bonus points to Beth. I think Beth is a great character. She would be great in most Goosebumps books. I just wish that she had a better book than this. So yeah, with all the flaws I have with it, they're kind of like slight, little to big, slightly big mediums. But I gave bonus points to compensate. It would land in a D without the bonus points. But I only deducted 1.4 points off the top and gave this a 3.6 out of 5. This isn't a more average book to me. Average, maybe / good, decent book. You know, it's not the worst thing ever. It's very flawed. It has a lot of C-tier qualities to it. Feels kind of even with books like 5th Grade Zombies, Egg Monsters from Mars, Deep Trouble 2, books like that. So that's where I have it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Horrors of the Black Ring. Let me know down in the comment section down below. Do you love this book? Do you hate this book? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.